Okay, so let's dive into this explainer with a true story that honestly feels like it's straight out of a Hollywood movie. Picture this. It's a chilly autumn day in October 2015. The head of the CIA, John Brennan, picks up his phone, and it's a stranger on the line. Now, if Brennan wasn't one of the most powerful people on the planet, you might just write this off as an annoying prank call. But trust me, it absolutely wasn't.
We're dropping right into the middle of the action here because the caller was actually a 15-year-old kid from the West Midlands of England going by the alias Kraka, and he had just successfully hacked the private accounts of the CIA director. When Brennan demanded to know what this kid wanted, the response was just chilling. He said, "I don't want anything. I already own you." Oh, and as a kicker, the teenager demanded $5 trillion and told Brennan he wanted the U.S. to stop bombing the Middle East. I mean, the sheer audacity is mind-blowing.
And that brings us to the central mystery we're unraveling today. How in the world did a teenager with virtually no resources, sitting in his bedroom smoking pot, manage to bypass billions of dollars in government cybersecurity? Seriously, how does a kid orchestrate one of the most humiliating cyber attacks on the United States government?
Chapter 1. A Call to the CIA.
So, let's look at our primary instigator, Kraka. Like I said, a 15-year-old British teen living in a sleepy, former mining town where, well, there wasn't a whole lot to do besides get high and hang out online. He was furious over U.S. foreign policy, especially regarding the Middle East and Palestine, so he formed a hacker collective called Krakas with Attitude. It is the ultimate David versus Goliath setup. On one side, you've got these chaotic, unpredictable hacktivists in their bedrooms, motivated by this weird mix of political justice and just doing things for the lols. And on the other side, the U.S. intelligence apparatus. We're talking national directors, multi-million-dollar budgets, and the most highly secure facilities on Earth. It just seems impossible they could even leave a scratch, let alone breach the walls.
Chapter 2. The Rise of Hacktivism.
To really understand how we got to that phone call, we need to zoom out a bit and meet an American teenager who went by the name Default. He was completely fascinated by the decentralized hacktivist group Anonymous. He saw them forcing the entire globe to pay attention without ever having to step outside their front doors. For Default, hacking started out as this wild mix of altruism and curiosity. Working with the splinter group called AnonSec, he actually managed to gain access to a university botnet, and he literally hit a delete all button on $9.4 million of student debt at Windsor University. He just felt like wiping the slate clean for people. He also helped shut down government websites in Denmark to expose legal animal brothels. He was quickly realizing just how much intoxicating power he literally held at his fingertips.
Chapter 3. The Snowden Inspiration.
But then, the whole environment of online trawling and petty vigilante justice shifted completely in 2013. It collided with a massive geopolitical earthquake. You remember Edward Snowden's leaks, right? They completely shattered the illusion of privacy, proving the government could essentially spy on anyone who touched a computer. This absolutely infuriated young Americans like Default. He didn't want to just sit back and become a target. He wanted high-ranking intelligence officials to know exactly what it felt like to be watched.
But the real breaking point? Watching the National Intelligence Director James Clapper sit there and directly lie under oath to Congress, publicly denying that the U.S. spied indiscriminately. That was the spark that set everything off. It enraged both Kraka and Default. They were so disillusioned by the public's complacency that they decided the only way to get people to wake up was through absolute, unadulterated chaos.
Chapter 4. Hacking the Intelligence Elite.
So, let's get into the mechanics. How did they actually pull off this digital heist against America's most powerful men? Well, it wasn't some complex Matrix-style code breaking. It actually strips away all that Hollywood hacker mythology and comes down to shockingly simple social engineering. Check this out. First, Kraka just looked up John Brennan's publicly available Verizon phone number. Then he called Verizon's internal tech support, pretended to be an on-site technician, and literally made up an employee code on the spot. And the support agent bought it. They gave him access, and Kraka immediately reset the PIN and password to Brennan's private AOL email account. Boom. That was it. That is how the director of the CIA was compromised. Unbelievable, right?
But of course, they didn't just stop at that prank call. Once Kraka was inside Brennan's email, he stumbled onto an absolute treasure trove of highly classified and deeply embarrassing files, and he handed them straight over to Julian Assange at WikiLeaks. We're talking Brennan's 47-page SF-86 security clearance form, which contained incredibly sensitive psychological and criminal records. There was also highly classified correspondence discussing how to make certain interrogation methods, which is really just a polite word for torture, legally compliant.
From there, things escalated fast. The hackers became completely drunk on their own power. They started with James Clapper actually getting his home phone rerouted to the Free Palestine movement, then Brennan. Then they pushed even further, using the accounts they'd compromised to fish their way into the FBI deputy director's account, and that was the master key. From there, they accessed massive federal databases, exposing the personal, private information of 29,000 people, specifically 9,000 DOJ officials and 20,000 FBI agents.
And we have to talk about the real-world fallout of this, because it's massive. That laughably simple fake tech support call, it ended up costing the CIA $1.5 million in damages and relocation expenses. Several undercover operatives literally had to be forced into hiding because their identities and personal contact details were suddenly floating all over the public internet, all courtesy of a few bored teenagers.
Chapter 5. The Inevitable Downfall. Look, you poke a bear this big, there are going to be consequences. You just can't humiliate the CIA and the FBI simultaneously and not expect them to come knocking. Now, for years, Default had been absolutely fanatical about his operational security. He was literally using satellite dishes to connect to the Wi-Fi of a Dairy Queen half a mile away just to obscure his IP address. But in the end, all it took was one tiny slip-up. While playing Xbox Live and having a few drinks with a friend, the news of the CIA hack flashed on the TV. In a moment of pure arrogant hubris, Default bragged over the voice chat, "Yeah, that was us." And supposedly, that friend turned around and immediately tipped off the feds.
The contrast here is just incredibly sobering. All of that digital bravado vanished in an instant. Imagine the reality check when FBI agents storm your bedroom pointing assault rifles right in your face. They dragged him out and flash-copied his hard drive before his computer's encryption could even kick in and lock them out. It was a swift and frankly brutal end to the game. And both teenagers paid a devastatingly high price. Because he was underage in the UK, Kraka became the first minor there to ever be imprisoned for hacking, serving 2 years in juvenile detention. But Default got hit even harder. He was handed a 5-year federal prison sentence and slapped with massive financial restitution. But perhaps the most painful part? The FBI seized his hard drive, which happened to contain 1,000 Bitcoin. To put that into perspective, today that's worth roughly $40 million. Just gone.
Default's confession in the courtroom really highlights the harsh reality of what they'd done. He told the judge he genuinely thought he was fighting for political justice, but realized, way too late, that taking on the entire U.S. security apparatus is going to ruin your life forever. It's a pretty stark reminder that what happens in the digital world has very real, very physical consequences.
Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. Back in late 2023, the U.S. government actually renewed the exact same controversial warrantless surveillance programs that these hackers were trying to expose. Programs that courts found had been misused hundreds of thousands of times. So looking back, we have to ask, was throwing their lives away actually worth it? Did they ever even stand a chance? Or is the surveillance machine just way too massive to ever actually stop? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.